Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. My name is Caroline Tonna, and I'm the curator of Palazzo Falson. It's a historic house museum in the heart of a medieval city, Medina, in Malta. And I'm very honored to be invited by ICOM-Malta to present something from the museum on a very special occasion of the International Museum Day. So Palazzo Falson is an 800-year-old building. It's always been lived in. And the last owner was Captain Olof Gollcher, who was half Swedish and half Maltese. And he was an avid collector. He loved collecting things. And that was the purpose why he bought Palazzo Falson, to put all his collections there. This was around 1927, and he lived there till 1962. He loved his house. He made it a dream house. He decorated the stately rooms, beautifully decorated, and he placed his many collections. We count around 45 different collections, from furniture, maps, watches, silverware, books, manuscripts, you name it, you'll find it there. He was also an artist, so he was painting himself, and he was very much interested in Maltese cultural history. He was an active participant in looking after land and underwater archaeology, which he pioneered actually in Malta. So yes, Olof Gollcher is a distinguished man, and he left his legacy by making sure that his home and collections will be open to the public. I'm very privileged. I feel very privileged that I am looking after this beautiful museum together with my team, my strong team of museum hosts and even maintenance people there. And also the museum is managed by Fondazione Patrimonio Malti, which is a non-profit organization in Malta that disseminates, continuously our local heritage through exhibitions, by means of publications, and the museum, and even a gallery. So let's start the presentation. I thought of delving into the archives of Palazzo Falson. We have all the papers there, documents of Olof Gollcher, letters, postcards, contracts, you name it, it's all there. So it really gives us the base for creating the narrative of the last owner who was living there, and a snapshot of what it was like in Malta for a well-to-do family in the 20th century. So we really see history through the life of Olof Gollcher. And since my interest is also in vintage photography and dress history, I thought I'd share something with you. Some photos from the archives. So it's not just written documents, but we also have family photos in different albums. Some of them are even like loose photos. But I'm going to start with a very special book, which is the oldest one. It's a photo album. And just to give you an idea of the size, it's the carte de visite album. These were very, very much in vogue, very, very fashionable. And people used to take their photos. This was in its very early days of photography. So it was really like a great innovation. Around in Malta, it was present around 1840s. So this book goes back to maybe not 1840s, but surely 1850s, because there are photos taken by Leandro Preziosi, who was a professional photographer in Malta, one of the very earliest photographers, whom I also had the luck to study his works. And this is the kind of carte de visite album where one would put family photos there. And as you can see, the size is very small. So you could even carry these photos in, say, a pocket of a jacket or in a purse. And it was, you know, that's why they're called card de visit, because they were like literally business cards. So this is the one of the highlights of Palazzo Falson. What you're seeing here, it is the central courtyard. So the rooms sort of circulate around this beautiful and charming courtyard. And I will take you to the next slide. So the family business of the Gollchers started in mid-19th century, almost the same time of the album that I've shown you. And they, you know, the first person to come to Malta was Olof Gollcher Sr. He was doing business in Malta through maritime business, his shipping industry, the shipping industry, which was very, very strong at the time and very present in Malta. And they owned ships. The Gollchers owned ships, and they were using them to transport merchandise from Malta to North Africa, Sicily, and the Adriatic ports. And then while he was in Malta, he actually, this is the photo album that I showed you. This is Olof Gollcher Sr. And from the photos which are in the album, we have three images which are very important. These are very rare photos. As I said, they go back to the 1850s by Leandro Preziosi, two of them. The two standing full-length photos are by Preziosi, and the one in the oval shape card de visit was by Conroy. So Conroy was an English photographer a bit later than Preziosi, and there we are. So Olof Gollcher Sr. is making use of you know, this innovation by capturing, you know, himself in full regalia. Here it's a court dress because he was consul for Netherlands, and you know, he was a very well-connected businessman, so he wanted to show also his status by taking these photos in the studio. As I said, the size of the photo is around 6 centimeters by 10, so they're very small, but very handy to give out. So such photos would be made in quite a good number of photos, so he could distribute them, and we also have them in the family album. And now we start meeting different members of the family. So again, on the left-hand side, there is Vincenza Gollcher. She's Maltese. She comes from a very good family and a well-to-do family. And, she was very young when she married Olof Gollcher Sr. Here is another picture that I am presenting, which is part of the art collection at Palazzo Falson. She's of an older age, obviously, in the late 40s, I would say. But you can see from both photos, presentations, because one is a photo in black and white and the other one is a painting. But you can see that from the style of clothing, she was a woman of very good taste, very fashionable. In the first one, the black and white one, we're seeing the Victorian style, which was the fashion of the day. And then later on, we see her, there's more detail in the depiction of the painting, including jewelry that really shows her status. Another sweet photo is two of their sons. They had 10 children, God bless them, and two of them, the elder ones, were James and Gustav. So Gustav is the elder one and James is the small one. Again, this is a typical setup of a studio photo where children are told not to move, they have to rest. Actually, he's resting his hand, his arm on the table to make sure that there is no movement. Sometimes they even had stands, iron stands, behind them to make sure that children won't move because they were the most difficult to photograph. The exposure was long, so the moment they move a little bit, the photo would be ruined. But they seemed very well behaved, and the photographer here, Preziosi, again Leandro Preziosi, captured the two charming boys. Okay, so what do we know? We're not just looking at photos, but when we combine the photos with other documents, we are putting a face to the person we're reading about, the person we're studying, we're getting to know more the characters, what their life was all about. And these two boys in their young age, like teenagers, were sent to London to further their education. They were at the University College of London, and luckily in the archives, we have a number of letters that were collected by Gustav. He kept them as a memento for him, and he bound them into a sort of book form. The dates are jumbled up, but it's approximately 1870s. That was the period that they were in London. And I mean, the stories that are emerging from the transcripts of these letters is amazing. So we get an idea of how difficult travel was, for example, the crossover of letters. So you send a letter and you already received another letter, which is not in reply of the first one that you've sent because of transportation. So there'll be sometimes a bit of a confusion as continuation. We do take things for granted because now we just send a message and it's delivered there and then. But in those days, it was more difficult. They were at an advantage because they were in the shipping industry and probably they knew more how the system works. And we also have some anecdotes like the two boys are saying, we're really missing Malta and we'd like, a taste of it. Can you please send us a box of oranges and prickly pears? So there are these very sweet and humane aspect when you go through these letters. And we have the photos also to show us who these personalities were. At the moment, I must say that I'm very grateful to a number of research volunteers at Palazzo Falson who really dedicate a lot of time to go through documents such as this one and photos and passports. So it's an ongoing research. We're always coming up with new discoveries, and that's the beauty of research. So as I was saying, we also have passports. This is quite an old passport because it belongs to Gustav. Now, yeah, we don't see him as a little boy anymore, but he's quite mature in his age. He was instrumental for the Gollcher shipping company, which still exists today. So it's still run by the family, by the Gollcher family. And this is quite a rare document as well, which has a photo. So here we have the two combined together. Gustav was traveling quite a lot, and there are a number of passports issued for the family. The thing is that every 2 years they had to be changed, and even from visas, applications of visas will help us to identify or locate the time and the country that they visited. So they were traveling quite a lot, even though transportation was very, very limited. On the right-hand side, we have also, it's not very clear because it needs good restoration and it is in a bad state, but at least it has been preserved in the best possible way. This is a photo that is hand painted. So here we also see the style of photography of the time. So a black and white photo would have been professionally hand painted to give color and make the person look more real, because before printing of photography was only possible in black and white, but they did find a way to put in color. And this is an example also of the development in photography. And Gustav also married a Maltese lady. Her name was Elisa Balbi. She was a very strong woman. She came also from a notable family, and she was also instrumental in securing Palazzo Falson. After her husband died, they were, in his last years, they were living in Rome because they had a beautiful house in Rome. She decided to buy Palazzo Falson in Mdina, which is an outstanding medieval old city. And I think we think that she wanted to make sure that her son, her only son, Olof Jr. now, will settle down in Malta and also place all his collection, because he was all the time amassing collections wherever he was traveling. So thanks to Elisa, Palazzo Falson, together with her son, she bought a very good property, which we are happy that now it is enjoyed by the general public. This is a photo taken on the rooftop of the office of the Gollcher Shipping Company with some family members and friends, and they're encircled in the middle. There is Olof, now at an advanced age, and Elisa. And here is the first picture of our Olof. He was called, by friends as Ollie. So we like to call him Ollie to also distinguish him from his father. And this is the very first picture of Ollie when he was a young boy. He was always a pet lover. We have a number of records of dogs, both in documents and also in pictures. So here it says it all. He was educated in Dulwich, in London. Then he lived for quite some time in Rome, I would say in between the 1920s and 1930s. And that is where he started his artistic life. He was not very much interested in the family business, but he was always interested in art, in traveling. He was a bit of a bon vivant, bohemian. He had a group of friends in Italy. They were artists. They were called the Confraternita della Pipa. So they were painting together, and what brought them together was art and smoking pipes. So it's quite colorful, that period of his life. We know very little of that early years. We would say between 20 and 30, we know little about Olof Gollcher, and actually at a later age, in his 40s, when he settled down in Malta. So here is another picture. We're seeing Olof now as a young man looking straight into us, which is wonderful to capture. This, it seems like a tableau vivant. It seems like everyone is looking at different directions as if they are posed to do so. Almost, you could see something like this on stage. And it was very fashionable at the time to have these kind of setup for photography, group photography. Could have been taken by an amateur photographer. We don't know who the photographer is, because here we moved away from the carte de visite. This is at a later stage, and these are part of other family albums, and they're just pictures without any captions. So we are trying, we've been over the past 10 years trying to identify the people in the photos, maybe see what occasion it was. In my case, I'm interested in dress, which I can date the photos approximately. So, you know, we all build on the visual documents that we have, everyone pitching in as a group of researchers to create the narrative of Palazzo Falson and the people who lived there. So here we see Gustav, the father, giving us a side profile, and Olof with his smart bow looking straight at us. Olof wasn't just enjoying himself in life. He also participated actively in World War I. Here we have a picture of that period, and also World War II. So he was doing his part, both as a volunteer and both then as an engagement with an enrollment with the British Army. And in Malta, he also served during World War II. We also have diaries of the period. When we say diaries, it's really just few notes. It's not like a diary writing his story, but maybe appointments or maybe something really special happened. And in one of the albums, in one of his diaries, he mentions that, you know, it was very a tough day where they had to drag people out from the rubble, and this happened in Vittoriosa. So he's experiencing the harshness of the war, and it wasn't just him, but also his wife. And here we have a pretty picture, two pictures of her. He met Nella at his late age, in his late 40s, and they got married in 1938, and she was very fond of nature, of animals. And here we see her as a young lady full of life, very avant-garde for her time. She loved to wear trousers, so you can imagine the people in Medina seeing her wearing trousers, riding the bike, smoking cigarettes, you know, inviting people at Palazzo Falson on these parties. And you know, there was a lot of, they created a lot of movement in Medina because they were all the time inviting people there. They also had another, a country house in Imjar, which was like more relaxed, informal, where they had their chickens, their beehives. There was a donkey, which was also listed in the, you know, as to be taken care of after they die. And, you know, a number of animals, birds, and they had a lovely setup, very close to nature, and they were involved also in gardening, maybe to relax and to have people over at Villa Brunswick in Imjar. This continued. We have a number of photos where we see Nella being active, you know, like rolling up her sleeves to help out in her duties, or let's say her joy really in looking after her chickens. She really loved them, and also the garden. And part of the family were a number of dogs. There was definitely a cat at Palazzo Falson because we have a photo of the cat, but a number of dogs. And here again, we have documents that show, for example, the certificate of a breed of a dog. A note in a diary that says, today we're taking the dog to the vet, or the dog is not well. There was also a bad accident with one of the dogs that was run over, and sort of Olof was really angry, saying, oh, how I wish, you know, I got hold of that person who did this to our dog. So they had this love for animals. And as I said, it wasn't just Olof that was involved in World War II, in helping people, but it was also Nella. And here we see Nella at a mature age, where she was very, very active as an officer in the nursing division of St. John's Ambulance Brigade. She was awarded as well for her good work. And we also know from oral history, people who remember her to this very day when they were very young, that she was giving first aid courses at Palazzo Falson. So she was helping the locals to give help, first aid to anyone who is injured during the war. Recently, I also came across a document which shows that she was a pioneer in introducing first aid as a course to prisoners. So they were like really forward thinkers, they were always, they weren't just enjoying art, culture, inviting people, but they were also giving a lot. They were very philanthropic in their daily life. And this brings us to Palazzo Falson. This is one of the old pictures of Palazzo Falson. A lot of dignitaries were invited to the museum. Now it's a museum, but at that time it was their home, of course. And it was their joy to entertain. We suppose that Olof was very proud to show his collections and saying all the stories, and Nella, who was Italian, she knew very well how to entertain as well. And we have a number of documents that gives us very good evidence that a lot of people visited their home. Besides that, they also opened their doors for philanthropic work, which, for example, we know that they organized a party, a dinner for poor people and elderly in Rabat and the Medina area. Not only in their house, they were also organizing other activities in the theater, in Rabat, for example, and in a school. There are records that they hosted refugee children there, Christmas time. So they were doing their part. They were really part of the community. And here we see Olof Gollcher, really in his old age. He died in 1962. He sort of slowed down in producing more paintings, his own paintings. He was more concentrating on the restoration of the house, and also on a national level, being a voice for our culture, our archaeology. He was all the time writing on the newspaper, complaining about building or how we should really look after our heritage. And also he pioneered underwater archaeology. So he tried to shift people who were spearfishing into the love for care of fish and enjoying it for other generations. Besides that, also divers who would come across some remains, they would report back, to the right people like Olof and a group of other people who were behind the institution of this archaeology organization. And they also organized expeditions, professional expeditions, which led to very fruitful results. So yes, we are biased about Olof Gollcher. We really see the good side of him. I'm sure there was also maybe, not so bright side of life, like each and every one of us. But the scope of this presentation is to bring to life character through photography, personal photos, personal correspondence, and further research to put it in context. And here we see Ollie and Nella on one of their trips. This was a trip to Sweden. Who was very much interested in his ancestry. So we went to look for places that the family had lived in, some family members that were still alive there. So he was interested also in his family line, and they traveled extensively. They traveled, they were very good travel companions together. They did their own separate traveling as well. And we are lucky that we have a lot of photos of the different places that they've been to. So this brings us to an end. I really hope that one day you will come and see Palazzo Falson, because there's so much more to say. I didn't give you a tour of the house, but it's a beautiful, and not just beautiful, but it's every stone in the house. There's a story, from graffiti, scratched on the walls, up to, so it covers from the 13th century to the 20th century. There's definitely like a storyline of our history through the journey of Palazzo Falson and its archives. So I thank once again ICOM-Malta for inviting me to give this talk, especially Patricia Camilleri and Joseph Skiro. And they're doing great work, and we hope to participate more in exchanging information. So many interesting things happening around us, even though we've been through quite a tough time. But we are here, we're even stronger than the day before. And I must also thank Fondazione Patrimonio Malti for trusting me in curating and looking after Palazzo Falson, this treasure that we have in Malta, and also staff that are there hands-on day in, day out, as well as research volunteers who have helped me to bring you this presentation today. So thank you very much.